Hey, exiles! I just got back from a nice quick trip to Canada with my family. It was fun but exhausting. We saw a few plays in Stratford, and in the middle of the night, as my daughter woke up and I went and I got her back to bed, I got a little notification on my phone saying there was yet another patch to Path of Exile 2 Dawn of the Hunt. And before we get into the exact changes, which are pretty darn good, I need to say, this cadence of patches for Path of Exile 2 is exactly what I was expecting when they started early access on December 6th of last year. Obviously, there were the holidays, there were some other issues that popped up that maybe didn't allow them to hit this mark, but now that they are going and we're seeing these consistent patches and changes to the game, I feel far better about GGG's hold on this early access period. Not to the extent that they're going to finish it out by the end of 2025, but I feel as though they're going to improve the game in a far quicker manner. At least in terms of the actual game mechanics, because as you'll see in a moment, this patch is once again missing any changes to character balance. And I think if they started to mix the sort of changes we see in 020H with minor balance changes to a wide array of skills, and we start to see those patches coming consistently every 2 or 3 weeks during the interim between these big launches, this will be a stellar early access period for the game. Let me know if you agree in the comments below, by the way. I really do think this is what I was picturing if they added some minor balance changes in as well. Okay, so we have 02H, which will be dropping at the end of this week, or it is projected to. First of all, we will be getting private leagues in PoE2. This means you pay some money, you are allowed to create your own league in which you and your friends can play. You can also just invite lots of other random players, and you will play on a fresh server, essentially. So you can start a brand new economy. You can make sure that there aren't any exploits happening, essentially. It's fun, and a lot of people have done it in Path of Exile 1. However, in Path of Exile 1, there are usually extra modifiers that you can add to make the game more challenging or change it in a fundamental way. For now, Path of Exile 2 private leagues will just be the base Path of Exile 2 game. You'll be able to start a fresh server with your friends. Think of it as a private Minecraft server that costs a little bit of money. I don't know the specifics on the cost for Path of Exile 2. The Path of Exile 1 costs are laid out in the description below. There's a link that'll link to all that information if you are interested. Next up, quick use currency buttons on strongboxes and essences. Essentially, instead of now needing to open up your inventory to edit an essence with a Val orb or a strongbox with all of the assorted orbs, there will be a little window that appears right on top of the object in game, allowing you to quickly manage how you want to edit it. Now, they didn't include powerful crafting orbs in for the strongbox, such as divine orbs, so you don't accidentally do it. But of course, if you ever want to use a divine orb on a strongbox, you can go right ahead and do that. Moving on, we now have improvements to breaches. So there are a few things going on here. First up, they have changed the minimum viable breach definition. So now if you're spawning a breach in a corridor, for example, it's going to spawn more monsters. You know, all those maps like Crypt and the like that felt really, really bad playing breach in, well, now they will feel better, which is great. Additionally, now when breach splinters drop in a map, they're not going to drop in larger stacks as they were initially planning. They're not going to drop as 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 when you open the hands. Instead, no breach splinters will drop until the end of the encounter, when they will vacuum all up and drop right on your character, just like Delirium. Everyone, you have no idea how long Path of Exile 1 players have been asking for this feature. I say over a decade, and they're finally implementing it in Path of Exile 2. Interesting to see. It lasted 10 years in Path of Exile 1, and we still don't know if it's actually going to make it to PoE 1. I sure hope it does. But after 6 months, it's already being changed in Path of Exile 2. That is that is kind of wild. Now, we also have another change to breach happening here, which I really, really like, and I thought was already in the game. I guess it's just a placebo. They're making it so that when you kill a magic or rare monster, it extends the duration of the breach a little bit longer. Beforehand, the breach would extend for the same amount of time no matter what sort of monster you killed, normal, magic, rare. That's being changed in this patch, which is another W change. Now, let's move on to Azmerian Wisp improvements. So they also have 2 changes here. The first is that when you activate a second Wisp while pursuing one already, that Wisp that you just activated will start going to the same rare that the first Wisp was going to. A lot of the times, especially when people invested into Wisps, you'd have 2 Wisps spawn and you'd activate one, activate the next, and they'd go in opposite directions. That's not going to happen anymore. So that is a big change, and it's a good change as well. The second is that they are increasing the spawn rate by 3 times of the Fox Spirit and the Spring Hare Spirit. Both of these are tremendously powerful. The talismans for them sell for many exalted orbs. They're quite useful in a lot of builds. That's how I made a lot of my currency. I think I got 4 divine for the Spring Hare talisman, which is great. And you'll be able to actually fight these. And they make for really interesting encounters. The Spring Hare, for example, causes the enemy that it's inhabiting to constantly respawn. It has a chance to respawn over and over and over again, and it will drop its loot over and over and over again. It's pretty darn cool, and it's unfortunate that many people never got to interact with this mechanic before leaving the league. And that is one thing that I just like to touch on really briefly here before we go into the Rogue Exile improvements, which I think is the weakest of all the improvements here. Unfortunately, lots of people have already quit Path of Exile 2020. And if you have, I don't necessarily think these changes are enough to bring a lot of people back. The game has definitely improved since launch in the eyes of many when it comes to loot, when it comes to these endgame alterations. And if you're on the fence on whether or not you should come back to the game, I would definitely just log in, try it out. If you have fun, keep engaging with it. If not, wait till 0.30, 0.40, or 1.0 if you don't want to engage with an early access title. Okay, Rogue Exile improvements. So Rogue Exile's had one main issue. Okay, I'd say a few main issues, but they're saying one main issue. Essentially, they were aggroing too soon. You'd see the life bar and the Rogue Exile wouldn't be anywhere on screen. They've now shrunk that aggro radius, and the life bar will only appear once you're much, much closer to them. Additionally, you couldn't see them, especially in darker maps, they're saying, so they've made them much lighter, the models, and they've added a mini-map icon. I'd argue that it's not just darker maps, it's just in general because there's so many monsters on the screen and they don't stick out, they're very small. I honestly don't like either of these changes. If it were up to me, I instead would increase the size of the Rogue Exiles by 30 to 40% to make them tower above other monsters, essentially turning them into conquerors from Path of Exile 1's Conquerors of the Atlas expansion. I think that'd be thematic, it would be interesting, and you would definitely be able to see those Rogue Exiles more. On top of this, I haven't fully invested into Rogue Exiles, but I have talked to people who have, and they just don't seem very rewarding, and they're not challenging, they just get obliterated when you start to scale your character at all. So I'd love to see some improvements to their rewards a little bit, maybe guaranteeing some sort of tiered rare items on them if you go into the Atlas skill tree for Rogue Exiles, just some improvements in general, because they really just don't seem rewarding, unfortunately. Next up, there are more item drop improvements. Remember, that was 0 OG, lots of loot drops. I have a video on that. Probably the last video before this video that had to do with patches. And this patch is going to help with 2 core things. Making perfect jeweler's orbs, getting that final support skill gem slot. They're making those less rare, and they're making level 20 uncut skill and spirit gems far more common, which is awesome. They are still supposed to be relatively rare, but they were saying that lots of people were getting deep into their progression before finding one. Yes, GGG. Very deep without finding that. That is very, very true. I do hope these are significantly more common. I haven't found one. I know many others haven't. I've only found 2 Greater's Jeweler's Orbs. Hoping they're more common. We'll see how it goes. But I really don't like that big burst of character powers, especially tied behind the perfect Jeweler's Orb. I'm more okay with it being tied behind the uncut skill gem, but that last aspect of editing your skills, I thought it would be more free in Path of Exile 2, and man, I don't like that word. I just thought it would, you'd have more accessibility to this, given the whole game is about, okay, really building out your skill repertoire, and it's not, You might be done with the game by the time you get that perfect jeweler's orb for your main skill. You're not going to get it for all the other skills that you're wielding on your character. Now we have some shrine improvements which are pretty interesting. First up, they removed the greed and corrupting shrine. The greed shrine turned all drops into gold. It was trash. And the corrupting shrine turned all item drops to become corrupted items. Also trash. So these are just gone for now. I wonder if they're going to revamp them in some way, maybe just boost gold drops with the greed shrine. That seemed like the simplest solution. Boost gold drops, but keep item drops, essentially is what I'm saying. I'm not sure. And corrupting shrine, maybe it could still corrupt items, but it would have a far greater chance of those corruptions to have positive outcomes, extra sockets, cool implicits and the like. They decided to not go with that for now. We'll see if they add that back in the future. And then on top of that, they made the rare shrines less rare. So diamond, the critical hits, every hit, and then divine shrine, you are just immune to all damage. They're appearing far more often. And a lot of shrines now last 90 seconds from 45, so doubling the time. And then some last 60 seconds instead of 45, so probably the diamond and the divine. Good changes there as well. There are also some new stash tabs. The ritual stash tab, which will store omens and audience with the king fragments if you're ever able to find any. I haven't played as much as many others, but these are still ridiculously hard to find, unfortunately. I don't envy those who are trying to progress their Atlas skill tree for ritual in SSF. That sucks. They're also adding the socketable stash tab, which will be able to hold all your runes, talismans, and soul cores. Okay, stash tab, yes. Okay, so this is coming into the game. This tab comes with, I'm confusing it with the affinity. Yes, this isn't in the game yet. I just have a custom tab set up for this. So this will be cool. This tab comes with a button that allows you to upgrade your runes from one tier to the next instead of having to use the reforging bench. Thank you. The reforging bench. These will be for sale in the MTX store shortly after the patch is deployed. Okay, cool. I'll probably buy both those. Okay, and then a bunch of miscellaneous other improvements. We'll go through just a few of the important ones right here before wrapping all this in a nice tight bow. So first of all, Arbiter of Ash corridor skill, the dancing skill, that is becoming far more clear. We will see what that looks like. This is the one that a lot of people have been pissed about. I've seen some Reddit posts of very angry folks who are getting absolutely dominated by this skill. I have spicy opinions on it. I do like that there are one-shots in the Arbiter of Ash fight, and I do hope they stay that way. They've added bindings to be able to quickly allocate strength, dex, and intelligence on passive tree. Is this something people will use? This is kind of crazy. There's some more submissions to the Twilight Reliquary key, so the unique MTX stuff. We'll be allowing charms to go into the flask stash. This is good. We like this. We're adding a quick travel button for town on the right-hand side of the waypoint screen. Okay, this is the big one that I'm very excited about. We're adding the shortcut for control right-click to bulk move currency items of the same type between inventories. Yes. This is in Path of Exile 1. Finally, it's in Path of Exile 2. This is common mostly when doing larger trades of currency using the currency exchange. True. And then here we go. This is massive for everyone, and Neversink cannot wait to get this into the game. We're adding a filter property to be able to filter unidentified items by their item tier. So essentially, what this means is instead of sometimes having those bases hidden that are still, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, you can now set your filters to say, okay, show all tier 5 items, show all tier 4, tier 3, so on and so forth. This will be big. This was supposed to be back in the game a few months ago. It must have just been missed, or maybe they thought the functionality was there and it's not. And then they've fixed a bunch of client crashes. And of course, once again, they're hoping to deploy this by the end of the week. And they're immediately starting on their next update, bringing me even more improvements to gameplay and quality of life. W Grinding Gear Games. Anyone who's saying this is not a win patch and that Grinding Gear Games is doing a much better job compared to 010 when nothing was going their way and they had holidays is... I mean, you can critique them all you want, but if you're hating on this, I don't get you guys. I really don't. Obviously, there are still lots of qualms to have with the game, and I'll list off a few right now. Balance changes before 030. Grinding Gear Games, please do some minor balance changes. You don't even have to smash anything. Just buff up the stuff a little bit that is underperforming. I'm not talking about huge swings. I'm talking about, a 10 to 15% increase on damage. Kind of what you were doing with Lightning Spear at the very start of Dawn of the Hunt. Another thing that appears to be happening quite a bit, I see a lot of complaints about it, and I'll give a little signal boost here, is the fact that there are still crashes on European servers, and it seems to be server instability related. Now, Grinding Your Games did address this and say it was because of DDoS attacks. It's still going on a month later, so hopefully they find the source of these issues, and I know there's not a lot you can do about DDoS if that's indeed what it is, but hopefully they discover what's happening and squash it as soon as possible. And then number 3, it doesn't even have to do, it kind of has to do with Path of Exile 2. News on Path of Exile 1 3.26. A new Path of Exile 1 expansion and getting that game back to having consistent updates every 3 to 4 months would be one of the largest wins for Path of Exile 2 and the overall ARPG or PoE community. Please, Grinding Your Games, knock it out of the park. We're hoping to hear some news on it within the next 2 to 3 weeks. End of May, I believe, was the timeline, and then it was supposed to release in June. I do hope everything is on track for that, and I do hope to keep seeing more improvements to Path of Exile 2, such as this patch in the lead up to 0.30, which I'm hoping is going to be a banger and maybe add a campaign, an interesting new class, a campaign act, banger new class. We'll have to see though. Let me know in the comments below, everybody. Did you like the looks of this patch right here? Do you have any issues with it? Are there any other things you'd like to see changed for Path of Exile 2 Dawn of the Hunt right now? Do you think Grinding Your Games is on the right path with this style of early access update? Or do you prefer just the big banger patches every 3 to, honestly, 5 months? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure if you liked the video to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more Path of Exile 2 news updates, live streams, podcasts, and the like. And I will see you in the next video. My fellow exiles, stay sane.